All right. Well, welcome everyone. I'm so glad that you chose to spend your rainy Saturday morning here. Oh, Sue's asking if I can make her the co-host. So I will see if I can figure out how to do that. Obviously, she thinks that is possible. So Sue, I will try that. Make host. Yeah, it's only offering me the opportunity to change host. I'm not sure how to make you co-host. If you can message me with how to make you co-host, I'd be happy to do it. But I will start with introducing myself. So I am Lynn Keelhorn, and in the first meeting, I think I knew everyone there because I had mostly put together the distribution list. But as we've tried to get word out and broaden participation, I'm happy to see some new faces. So I'm looking forward to meeting some others. So again, I'm Lynn Keelhorn, and along with Sue Linderman and Mike Ganade, we co-founded and co-lead the Peace and Justice Work Group of Westminster Presbyterian Church in Wilmington. So that is the role. It started several years ago, and I'll tell a little bit more about the programs we do when we get into that section. But just briefly a little bit more about myself. I also co-coordinate Delaware's campaign to end debtors prison, which is focused on fines and fees reform. And I've been on the coordinating committee of Delaware's Poor People's Campaign. So that's enough about me for now. I will pass it to Leveda.
Thank you. Leveda Owens-White. I am a faith community nurse. Have been so for some 30 years. And during that time, I have accumulated quite a number of community activities and organizations, among which is around a dozen or two that as we go through the agenda today, that some of those will fit in nicely with. But I mainly am trying to be the person that connects the dots among the community, all the various community groups that are out there doing things for the health and welfare of the community. So I like to consider myself the town crier and let the left hand know what the right hand is doing. You're muted.
Thanks. How about Maria?
Well, good morning. I'm a member of the St. Barnabas Church in Wilmington, and we've done a few racial educational works and participated with the Y. And through Sheridan, I was kind of introduced to your group, Lynn, because one of the things that both Sheridan and I have been interested is in walking into action. And it has been a little difficult. I have tried to reach out to the Poor People's Campaign because I'm interested in what could I do with them. I've also been interested, like you, in the debtors prison, anything that we could do as a group to assist them. And my other interest is in the desegregation of our schools, in which we actually can establish equal programs of support for all students is what I'd like to see, because I do know there are too many discrepancies. Just looking at my local schools like Dickinson and McKean, for example, which are not far from me. And my children both participated and graduated from those schools. So those are my interest in just keeping myself educated, trying to understand what's going on in my community, where I can jump in to support and lend voice or however. So I appreciate participating with you today.
Great to have you. Becky?
Hello, everybody. I'm Becky Laster, and I'm from the First Unitarian Church in Wilmington, which is out on 202. You may see our sign on 202. That's what most people know us for, is our sign. I am the chair of our Human Rights Task Force at First Unitarian, and we do a lot of racial justice awareness, partnering with the YWCA. And then I am also chair of a group called Unitarian Universalist Delaware Advocacy Network, which joins the 5 UU churches in Delaware, so all across the state, to do legislative action. And so that group, we meet monthly and have speakers generally to talk about legislative issues. So we're currently, as I know many of us are, involved in the housing advocacy. And we also do a lot on the climate change advocacy and on environmental justice. But pretty much any progressive cause you might hear about us, we might be there. We try to be involved in a lot of the progressive causes through those organizations. So
Thank you. Neil?
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. Neil Reeves. I'm a member of Bethel AME Church in Wilmington, Delaware. Although I recently moved to Georgia about a year ago. But I still have a strong interest in Delaware. Most of my volunteer work is still in Delaware for the most part. Currently serve as the president of the men's ministry at Bethel AME Church. Completed my Master's of Divinity last May, and I'll start going through the ordination process next month, preaching my initial sermon there at Bethel. I have a strong interest in criminal justice reform and men's ministry. So I met Lynn and she invited me to this session.
Thank you. Shannon?
Morning, everyone. I'm Shannon Hansen. I am the Minister of Reconciliation for the Newcastle Presbytery, which is all of the Presbyterian churches in Delaware and the Eastern Shore of Maryland. I am also in that role. I am the convener of what we call the Montgomery Group, which is our racial and social justice advocacy group. We focus on housing and on experiential learning opportunities, including, and I think for this group of particular interest, pilgrimages to Montgomery, and specifically taking young people on pilgrimages to the South. Thanks.
Thank you. Cecily?
Okay. Good morning, everyone. It didn't seem like it was going to let me unmute. I'm very happy to be with you this morning. Sheridan is out of the country and asked if I would come in along with Maria. I am the newly appointed Commission for Racial Justice and Reconciliation for the Diocese of Delaware. And I've only been in this position a couple of months. I've been in the field of social work. I've been a clinical social worker for, more than 50 years. And I've also done mediation, and I've lived abroad, and racial justice has always been very important for me. And the Episcopal Church, when our new presiding, when he's no longer new, presiding Bishop Michael Curry started, he was looking at our church, the whole Episcopal Church, and becoming a beloved community. And so all of the dioceses were asked to form a racial justice and reconciliation commission. And so just last November at our diocesan convention, it was approved for to hire a part-time commissioner. So my responsibility is to go out and to help our parishes become the beloved community to live out our baptismal covenant to respect and love every individual, which seems to be more difficult every day with what's going on in our country. Racial justice has always been very interested. I've always been very interested in it. As I said, I've been fortunate enough to live abroad, and I have a very diverse family. And I grew up in New York City in the 60s, when it was really a fabulous time to be around and involved in a lot of things that were going on with diversity and people getting along, and just a better time. So this is a very, as you all know, a very demanding call that God has called us all to. And it's holy work, it's spiritual work, and it's hard work. And we have to dig deep, love one another, and be able to hear one another and respect the differences that are among us. So I'm really happy to be able to be a part of this meeting today. I'm sure that I will not be able to make many of the meetings in Sheridan, and Maria will be the representatives. Oh, I'm retired, but Neil, you will soon see, once you have that collar on your neck, it never comes off. So I am, as I say, I also still have my private practice. So I see about 12 patients a week, and I'm 20 hours working with the diocese. And my home church is St. Barnabas, but I'll be going around the whole diocese. That's my responsibility. And I really look forward to being with you all when I can jump in. And Lavita, it's very good to be with you. Thank you.
Thanks. Catherine?
Hi, good morning. I am Catherine Dean, and I am with Trinity Episcopal Parish, and I put together the Trinity SJ Weekly, which where I gather information from groups YWCA, United Way, Building People Power. I mean, groups all over Wilmington who are doing wonderful things, and I pull the information together to make it super easy for people to see what is going on in the community and how they can participate. So that's what I do. And generally I get involved in these some of these events as well. You might call me a community activist. So
Another town crier.
that's right, exactly. I'll ring my bell.
And although it is the Trinity Social Justice newsletter, Catherine is not opposed to adding people outside of Trinity to her distribution list. So anyone who would like to get on it, just ask her. It really is a great consolidation of a lot of the social justice activities going on in the community. So it's a great resource.
Thanks, Lynn. And if you want to be on the list, maybe put your email in the chat box. That'd be perfect. Thank you.
Great. Zita.
Good morning. I'm Zita Draper. I'm here for Seaside Jewish Community in Rehoboth. I got here because Lynn, I asked Clara Licata, who is the legislative advocacy chair of SDARJ, to come and asked her if she knew somebody who was on the social justice committee at Seaside. And so I'm on both of those things. I'm a member of Seaside and a member of the social justice committee, and I'm also very active in SDARJ. Clara decided that since SDARJ is not, she initially asked me to stand in for her, is not a faith house or a faith congregation, it's social justice organization, if I would stand in for Seaside. And this only happened a few days ago, and our co-chair, or the co-chair of the chair of the Social Justice Committee is away. So she just asked me if I would stand in, and let them know what the group is all about, et cetera. I'm not sure if I would be a permanent member or not. Anyway, Seaside just celebrated its 25th anniversary last year. It has always been involved with community activism. It was the founder with Epworth and the mosque in Kent County, I think it's in Dover, of a multi-faith alliance. And since that time, 7 years ago, it's now expanded and now includes 2 Black churches in Rehoboth, the Unitarian Church in Lewis, and St. Peter's Episcopal Church in Lewis. So they're now about 10 members of this multi-faith initiative. One of the things they do, they run a program called My Neighbor's Faith that has one of the representatives from each of the churches presenting a program on a theme every month. That's open to all of the congregations. The Social Justice Committee of Seaside has been active in a number of areas. They've had speakers on what's happening, HB 198, what's happening with that. They've had speakers on last year on the police reform. They've had speakers on criminal justice. They do a project every year with the youth from the multi-faith initiative to working together in a park to clean it up. This is the second year they've done that. And they've also worked closely, Seaside has worked closely with SDARJ, and they just are starting now, Seaside and SDARJ, an alliance called Speaking Out Against Hate, and trying to get politicians and other leaders in the community to speak out whenever, by writing letters to the editors, going on interviews on radio shows, whenever there is an incident of hate in Sussex County or in our communities. So that's Seaside in a nutshell, I guess.
Thanks for joining us, Sita. Donna, are you able to speak now?
Yes, sorry, I'm at my mom's. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm taking care of my mom this morning, so I will be hopping on and off probably, and may disappear about 11 o'clock, but I'm Donna Hitchner, Executive Director of the Methodist Action Program, which is kind of the social justice arm of the United Methodist Church Pendel Conference. We just had our advocacy day yesterday in Dover, where we met with about 9 legislators over the course of a couple of hours, which was no mean feat. And we advocate for issues that are related to our social principles. The United Methodist has a rather lengthy list of social principles, including all kinds of justice issues, racial equity, economic equity, education equity, climate concerns, housing concerns. My biggest issue that I've had since I've been in this position is when I go and speak at churches, and I ask for a raise of hands of who in the congregation, now these are United Methodists, understand, knows about the United Methodist social principles. Usually only the pastor raises their hand. So it's a very big educational learning curve that we're kind of up against, because these social principles many times are just not in the knowledge base of the typical United Methodist sitting in the pew. And what we're trying to do is getting informing them about these social principles and get them out of the pew and get them working for, social justice in alignment with our social principles. We face a lot of, well, that's political, let's get over it. Jesus was political. Okay, let's just get over that. He was a radical. He tried to make changes because people were oppressed, and he wanted to deal with the oppression. And he told us to go and do likewise. And we can make disciples if we engage people. But if you're sitting in the pew, you're not engaging people. I'm sorry, I'm on my soapbox now. I'll shut up. Who hasn't had a chance to speak?
Thanks, Donna. Well, Norm just joined us, but I'll give Norm, and maybe Judy's with them, a chance to settle in, and we'll go to Sue Linderman, who I'm guessing is not going to introduce herself due to her laryngitis, but stop me if you want to jump in and introduce yourself, Sue. Otherwise, I will introduce you because I know she's listening. She really wanted to be part of this morning, but unfortunately has gotten sick and can't talk. But as I said earlier, she is one of the co-founders and co-coordinators of Westminster's Peace and Justice Work Group. She also has a 6-part Racism in America class series that she has done through a number of different venues throughout the community, including with the YWCA and the Episcopal Church and a number of others. So I think a lot of folks have had the opportunity to see her class. It is really good if you haven't had a chance to participate. Norm and Judy, we're just wrapping up introductions. So would you guys like to go ahead and introduce yourselves?
I'm Judy Moore. I have just become a co-chair of the Multi-Faith Steering Committee, and that involves the Episcopal Church in Lewis, Epworth in Rehoboth, Bethel in Lewis, the Seaside Jewish community, and the mosque in Dover. And we have a steering committee that tries to just do relational things, programs like doing movies. We did LIFTA last summer and had a wonderful discussion with that. Let's see, we just had last Sunday had a youth cleanup day for Earth Day with Muslims, Jews, and Christians. It was just a wonderful experience, and we're looking at trying to talk with the other multi-faith groups in Wilmington and Central Delaware, just to see if we can begin to collaborate.
Norm?
I just washed the dishes so she could do all these things.
Very good. Well, thank you all for joining this morning. Again, oops, someone else is coming in. We'll give, as soon as Cindy gets on, we'll give her a chance to introduce herself, and then we'll jump into the rest of the agenda. Welcome, Cindy. Good timing. We are just wrapping up introductions. I'm sorry you missed everyone's introducing themselves, but we'll be talking more about things that we do. So hopefully you'll have a chance to get that. But would you like to briefly introduce yourself to the group?
Sure. Thanks for letting me in late. I had a schedule conflict, but wanted to get what I could out of this. So I'm Cindy Richards. I'm from St. Barnabas Episcopal Church, and myself and another several of us are kind of co-leading a Becoming Beloved community group at our church. And we've sponsored a few listening circles, and we're really just getting started.
Okay, thank you. So this group is, again, it doesn't have a formal name. It's not a formal anything, just a bunch of us who thought it would be good to get to know each other better for a number of reasons. I will put in the chat a link to a Google Sheet that has the names and emails and the organization that each of you represent, as well as those who are interested in staying on the distribution list but could not make it this morning. So that will be a good reference list and allow you to follow up with each other on things. That being said, I think part of what we had discussed in February that would be valuable is learning enough about the work that each other do that we might find opportunities to partner or, join up with existing programs that each other may be working on. So we'll take some time to highlight some of those in just a little bit, but then also leaving time to talk about, are there some new things that we as a group may want to co-sponsor and do or take on? Not that we need to, but I think it's, something that some of us thought might be a good opportunity. I'd like us to leave a little bit of time to talk about who else is not here with us and how we could reach out to them and pull them into the conversation so that we can still broaden who's participating in this. And if we have time, I think we all, some of you have already mentioned it, I think we all struggle with how to bring in others within each of our own faith communities who are not already participating in social justice initiatives. How do we bring more of our fellow parishioners or congregations along? So if we have time, we can get into that. Are there any other agenda items or topics that anyone would like to see us save time for today?
I think it's so much about sharing what each one of us is doing and how we can share what we're doing with others that might be able to then jump in. And I totally agree with our congregations not being in the forefront of what's going on, and our need to reiterate the baptismal covenant that we all share about loving and the dignity of all human beings that needs to seem to be reiterated.
Then is there any way that we can create some kind of I'm not good at this kind of thing, but creating a forum that we can go and post what we're all doing? Is that something that we're going to talk about today?
I did put that on the agenda in terms of how to share info in between meetings. I think we had said last time that this group doesn't have a lot. We're all very busy, and adding a lot of regular meetings to our schedule is not something any of us wanted to do, but maybe getting together, not for a full 3 hours, but getting together maybe on a quarterly basis would be good for us to share and keep in touch with each other. But I think there is a need, if we are going to do more collaborating, to share information in the intervening period so that we don't go 3 months at a time without being able to catch up. So yes, I think it would be good to create a means of doing that. I don't have any super great ideas, but some simple things that I think could work that we can talk about as we get into that later. So yes, I hope we can do that.
Maybe your spreadsheet might be a site, possibly. Make it easy for everyone to post something there. I'd really be interested, for example, in participation in legislative actions, especially that new SB bill, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name, on prison reform, which is very critical right now.
The probation reform, yes.
Thank you, yes.
Well, why don't we go ahead and start with the sharing of, I guess, key projects or programs that each of us already have going on that we think would be of interest to others, either because they may want to join or because they may want to use what you're doing as a model for something they could do within their own. Either way, anything that you think you've learned through your efforts that would be useful for others to know, whether it's things that worked well or things that you tried that didn't work well. I think anything we can share with each other to so we're not reinventing the wheel is helpful. Other than that, I don't have anything to drive this part of it. We can go in any order. People can jump on. I hope it will be just conversational as folks are talking. So would anyone like to start? Oh, I see Leveda, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to to remind everyone that we do Peace Week Delaware every year. And this year will be October the 7th to the 14th. And so if there's any interest, if we wanted to try and bring folks into this group, that maybe we could do a common project for Peace Week Delaware, or at least have each group, each individual group to do something to support Peace Week Delaware.
I think that's a great idea. And in fact, Sue Linderman had texted me last night suggesting Peace Week might be one of those things that we would want to co-coordinate, co-sponsor, do something together, and also maybe something around Juneteenth as another possibility that she suggested. Cecily?
Thank you. Yes, Juneteenth, there's a couple of items that are on our list. Juneteenth was one of them. And the Harriet Tubman is another. We have a grant that's coming out that has to be written by June, middle of June, for $1,000 for a program to acknowledge Harriet Tubman. And she's also listed as one of the saints in the Episcopal calendar. So that was something that I would like some ideas on, and definitely, if possible, some other programs or denominations and interest groups too, if they're interested to get involved in. The other is Absalom Jones. He has a statue or a monument that's in Milton that really needs a lot of repair. And so that's something else that's coming up. So those are three of the big things that our bishop has spoken to me about, wanting to acknowledge Harriet Tubman, Absalom Jones. And I definitely like the Peace Week, and I can see that's something that the Episcopal Diocese could be involved in. Definitely have a peace walk or whatever in all of the different counties. Sheridan, who loves to write grants, is willing to work on writing the grant for Harriet Tubman. And so if there's anyone that has some ideas of a program or who might be interested in working with us, if you get in touch with me, I'd appreciate it.
Great. Becky?
Thank you.
Yeah, hi. So we have an event, I shouldn't say we, was helping to organize an event with organization called the Friends Committee on National Legislation. And I know most of us do local work. And so this is a little bit different because it's about advocating with our state, our US senators and congressmen. And it's the Quakers, which interestingly enough, we don't seem to have any. So there's a group that we might want to add to the list of who maybe should be here. I feel like the Quakers were really active in the Poor People's Campaign a while back, but I don't know what's happened to them since. Like, I feel like I haven't seen them as active in Delaware as they used to be. But anyway, it's so we have actually they have this Friends Committee on National Legislation every year does a peace advocacy campaign with the federal government, right? Advocating all across the country with Quakers and other advocacy organizations all across the country. And one of the states that they do not have an advocacy team is Delaware, which is somewhat strange considering we have that the president is from Delaware. So they're trying to get started a peace advocacy team. And this is coming up actually in 2 weeks. They're doing a 3-hour training in Camden, Delaware, to try to be in the middle of the state so people can come to that training from the middle of the state. And this year, often they're campaigning about like getting out of the war business. And getting out of spending lots of money on war. And this year, it really is about investing in peace instead of anti-war in some ways. And they are looking to, so the training is an advocacy training that will talk about building relationships with your congressmen and senators and is applicable to all that we do. But they will also focus on these 3 funds that they're trying to get the federal government to put money into. And it's these peace funds. And so I'm going to put in the chat, I will put in the chat their website and also a registration link for the training that's in 2 weeks. What they are hoping for is to have at least 15 people come to the training. I've been sort of putting it out in a lot of places, so I think I think otherwise they might cancel, but I think they've also said it's possible to attend virtually, which is one of the things I pushed was like, we have to do both. You have to have in person and virtual. And so, but I don't think their current, what they have in their thing says it's virtual, but I was told they do have a virtual option. But I think it's something that this whole group would sort of agree on, right? Like this is something that is important. We only have 3 people to actually go meet with on this. It's not like all of the Delaware legislature where there's, you know, it's depends on where you live and it depends on this. All of these people represent all of us. And the 3 of them represent all of us, and there are only 3 of them. So, and I really think that even though we haven't done it yet, this Quaker group is really good at what they do. Like they like really talk about the building of relationships, and beyond what I feel like we often say, well, we already know our representatives, we already know our senators, but this is about building a relationship about an issue. And for the Quakers, it's peace. Like that's the issue. And sometimes, as I said, it's an anti-war message, but this year it happens to be an invest in peace message and giving money towards peace. So that's a very immediate thing that is occurring. And I will stop talking now, but may jump in.
What was the date of that again?
It's the 13th of May.
May 13th, because the Poor People's Campaign could help get the message out about that, because that is one of the pillars of the Poor People's Campaign, and one of the pillars that we don't often pay a lot of attention to in terms of the war economy and you know, working to combat that.
That's what it's all about, is combating the war economy.
Right. So if Delaware doesn't really have a group yet, is it who's trying to?
It's the Friends National Committee on Legislation is a national organization, and they create the state groups. And they were like, this is a hole that we don't have Delaware. And somehow they got in touch with
you.
They just got in touch with us. And I was like, yeah, let's try it. Let's see what we can get together. And we put it together. So.
And would you be willing to come to a coordinating committee meeting of the Poor People's Campaign to talk with them about it?
Sure, if it's between now and the 13th.
Yes, I think there's, I need to check. We meet every other Monday. I think it's this coming Monday at 2, if you happen to be available.
Yeah, I'll have to.
I'll reach out to you offline.
I have to check my work schedule on that one.
Yep.
But yeah, I would definitely be happy to talk about it. But I do think it's something that especially faith communities should really be able to get behind this, because regardless of denomination. And I don't think they need that many people in Delaware, because it's not, as I said, there's three people to be going to talk to.
Right.
You're gonna put that in the chat?
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Okay, Don, I see you have your hands up, but Shannon, I think you tried to say something and you were muted, so we didn't hear it.
Oh, I was just gonna say how would something like that connect with Leveda's work for the Peace Week? Like, how could it, if there's already a Peace Week, I don't know.
Actually, the first event we did was a Peace Week event at our church last fall. So we did sort of a mini training on this. And maybe, as Peace Week goes, maybe 8 to 10 people attended, and most of them were first you, because again, that's sort of how unfortunate. I know we're trying to do more collaborative work on Peace Week with Peace Week, but it tends to be, you put it out to the people you know, and the people you know come. And so it was mostly Unitarians at that event. So I am hoping that after this event, they say that then they do, I think, 2 or 3 trainings after that to even dive deeper in. But I also want to say we want to do another Peace Week event for sure with this group, because I think it's really something that would be not that hard to add to people's agendas, and would be really educational in terms of how to get in there and advocate successfully. I mean, I think this is another part of the agenda, but getting people to join in the advocacy work it's a tough battle sometimes to get more people. It's always the same people doing it. And so I do think training is a way to help people get there. And so I think they are providing some really great trainings about how to feel more comfortable doing this work. So.
Great.
Okay, and I'll put stuff in the chat. Sorry.
Donna? Oh, she took her hand down. I think that must mean she's not able to speak right now.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't unmute myself. I just took my hand down. I didn't unmute. So Becky, I'm glad that is it Justin you've been in touch with, because he got in touch with us as well, but I wasn't able to really pick up on it. So I'm glad the Unitarians picked up that ball that I dropped.
Oh, thank you. I think the person they hired a new person.
Okay.
And we've been working with Juan, but
Okay.
is her name. But initially Justin may have been on back for the Peace Week. So
yeah.
So I know that name, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, and I think you're talking about too, the people over Pentagon bill, where they're trying to take $100 billion out of the Pentagon budget this year and put toward investment in, social programs and things. Is that the major push for this? I think I recognize that.
That is a good question. I currently think it's well, we can look at the website or
okay. Yeah, we could do that later.
I don't remember the specific bills, but there are 3 bills they're trying to fund. So it's about funding bills that are related to peace initiatives.
Right. But it's also
and they're peace funds that exist already. They don't even have to create the funds, they just have to put money in them. Right. So it's like the advocacy isn't about you need to create this new thing. It's about fund the thing that's already there, which is kind of nice.
Okay.
But Pentagon, one of them might be Pentagon, really. I'm not really sure.
Well, the people of a Pentagon bill is actually trying to relieve the Pentagon of $100 billion.
Oh dear.
Yeah, which that's going to be a big push, but they don't need that much money. What they are saying is that $100 billion won't even touch troop pay or, it's not going to be, it's not going to hurt the people in the armed forces. It's just waste,
Yeah.
So that was one of the things that I had seen this past week actually come up. But I did want to mention that on May 2nd, there's going to be a big lobby day not lobby day, it's a rally actually in Dover for the climate bills that are coming up. It's a big environmental day. Unfortunately, it's going to be very chilly that day, but and we're going to be outside. Senator Hansen is dropping a lot of bills. Well, actually, the bills are already on the books. I think it's HB or SB 99 is the Climate Change Solutions Act, and that is one of the bills that will be heard. I think in committee that day, and so there's a big push to get advocates there. It's a greenhouse gas reduction bill, which is very, very important to Delaware. So the rally starts at 11. I think the hearing is around noon or 1 o'clock. And then if it comes out of committee, it may go to the floor, when they convene it too. So, we're trying to get as many advocates there as possible. The main rally is being put on by Delaware Nature Conservancy. And the Methodist Action Program works with a lot of community groups like this. Sierra Club, we work with ACLU, we work with DVRC, Delaware Voting Rights Coalition, Campaign to End Debtors Prison, I drop in on them. So, one of the things that we need to have in the forum is, and Maria mentioned this, we need to know when these bills are being heard so that we can be there, or we can be there virtually to comment on them. Because I've had legislators tell us, well, you can put in your written comments via email, but nobody reads them. So the only way to really get heard is to be there in person, or to comment during the meeting virtually, which isn't as hard as it seems. Okay, so but we need to know when it's happening, and that's one of the things that I think the forum needs to be doing, is tracking the legislation so that we know what's happening. All right, I think I'm done now.
All right, Maria?
I agree with that. And my only comment was that to place all these legislative drives together in one large local and national forum would be great. I mean, and it's our education. And I know, listening to many of Reverend Barber's speeches on the Poor People's Campaign, where it is one of the parts of the driving struggles with the People's Campaign against the military system. And to say that if 57 cents of every one of our American dollars goes into the military complex, we are, obviously supporting a lot of military action. And he also points that it's not our military security, it's the contractors that are really making all this money. And I think there is a lot of waste. And I think our efforts can be to better use of our military budget, and that those dollars that are not put into military can then certainly be put into real poverty issues. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Neil?
Yes, I just wanted to share what I'm currently doing. My calling is public square ministry, so a lot of the work I'll be doing may not be necessarily directed to Bethel. However, they would know what I'm doing. Currently, I'm interviewing 100 African-American men on faith, family, and empowerment. And so I've interviewed about 25 to date. And from those discussions, my goal is to convene with experts such as psychiatrists, therapists, social workers, educators, marketing people, advertising, to see how we can address some of the questions, concerns identified from these discussion groups, from these discussions with these men. And from there, I hope to have built relationships where they can see the need and the importance of advocating for their causes.
Very good. Thank you. So I actually wanted to respond to the question or about tracking legislative initiatives. I don't have a suggestion in terms of tracking stuff at the federal level, but at the state level, the best that I've seen is the work coming out of the Working Families Party. And they do a deep dive into every piece of legislation that is introduced. They have a whole network of experts to do a quick analysis of anything that gets introduced. And then they'll come up with their, put it in green if it's something that progressives should support, red if it's something they should oppose, and a yellow if it's sort of neutral. And they'll even give talking points. And they will highlight, so they, on a weekly basis during the legislative calendar, will put out an update that includes what bills are going to be in what committees at what time during the week, which ones they think would be worth having people speak up, in committee for or against these bills. It's rather overwhelming because there's a lot of it. I think one of the things that we need to find a way to do is say, okay, how can we make it less overwhelming? How can we either divide things up, divide and conquer, or prioritize in a way that we say, let's put the focus on here, or how can we make it more manageable and not so overwhelming for folks? And how do we figure out when does it call for, there's a letter writing campaign that we want to broadcast with a really wide net so that we can have an impact. One of the things that we're hearing from legislators is that there's so many letter writing campaigns now that, if they don't get over 100 or 200 letters, they don't pay attention to it because, well, that one didn't get a lot of traction. It's raised the bar for what they expect from those letters. And oftentimes simple, phone calls can be more effective. So how do we give direction to folks when there is legislative action that we want to take in terms of having the most impact? And so that could be a whole nother topic of conversation. I don't want to take too much time now, but even to the point of figuring out who are the holdout votes and what districts are they in? How can we use our networks to actually leverage people in those districts to lean on the folks who really need to be persuaded? I think that's where a statewide group, which this now is, could have some, could be really, really helpful, is when we have representatives or senators in specific districts being able to identify constituents in those districts to be willing to speak with them. But I know I'm getting way off topic, but I think, when we do get to the part of talking about how can we create a space or repository where we're putting information, not only about each of the individual projects that our own faith groups may have going, like for Westminster, we can share our weekly Thursday talks, the topics, so that everyone knows each week what topic our class is going to be on, and people can join in or help advertise it if it's a topic that speaks to them. But it could also be a place to put some of this legislative information, letter writing campaigns, consolidate it into one place, even if they're letter writing campaigns that have been initiated by other groups in the community, whether it's, the ACLU or Delaware Center for Justice or whatever, we can have all that information available in this common portal, if that makes sense. I don't want to create work for something that's not going to get used, but that's where we need to talk about more of that later. But I'll get off my soapbox. Maria, you have to go ahead.
Yeah, no, I like your thoughts and I agree on how do we simplify it. And I was thinking, Lynn, if those of us that are really interested in the legislative end, using our senators and our representative itself on the federal level to say, hey, who is your intern or staff person that could relate to us issues of military spending legislature, so that we can focus it and have them assist us with those things, because they would know that. Then on a local basis, as we pay attention to our particular district, to say, okay, communicate with your representative about this issue. Maybe that could just be put out. But I think that would be a way of possibly making it easier.
Agreed. Catherine.
I'm sorry, I can't seem to figure out how to put my virtual hand out. I was going to say that in the newsletter that I put out, I do, when I see these kinds of notices come my way about, actions that could be taken, letter writing, phone calling, coming out to stand on the steps of the legislative buildings, whatever, I do actually include that in my newsletter. And maybe I could make a point of doing that on more of a regular basis. I think you all at this point will be on my newsletter, so you will see that and be able to, at least, for your own purposes, you will have that information available. I also do with Trinity. Trinity itself has its own weekly newsletter that I also contribute to, so that, the church and anyone who just only looks at the church newsletter has access to that information also. And I don't know if your church or your, religious situations have this possibility as well, but everybody can take this information and give it to their, their congregations this way. But as I said, my newsletter, which goes out to my congregation and to anyone who wants to be a part of it, it just happens to be called the Trinity Justice Social Weekly, Social Justice Weekly. It can go to anybody. So I will be posting more of that if people want to see more of that, for sure. But I have, I've done that in the past.
Thanks.
And also someone, I forget who else was mentioning, so maybe it was Becky, actually. I mean, the upcoming the Friends Initiative, the May 13th. I mean, that's something I would post as well. If you want to send me information, I can include that in my newsletter as well. So anybody, that's open to anybody.
That would be great. Yeah.
Okay.
One of the common themes that I had heard both during introductions and through conversations I've had with some of you offline is affordable housing as something that a lot of the different groups have been interested in. And I know Sonia was not able to join us today, but she, as the policy director of Housing Alliance Delaware, she is on top of both legislation as well as other programs and stuff to address that. She gave me some information she wanted me to share, which I will. And then I hope we can go around. I know, Shannon, you have an exciting project that maybe some of us other groups can join in with, and we'd just like to hear more about those. Let me quickly redo what Sonia had shared. So I think there's the day for housing, and there is a PDF she shared. I'll see if I can figure out how to get that into the chat. And then second is, she says, we are advocating for a designated stream of funding for safe and affordable housing in Delaware. Within a week, there will be an interfaith leader letter we will be asking people to sign. If you could share it with your clergy at the appropriate time, I would be very grateful. For more information about the Affordable Housing Production Act, you can find it here. So I will put that link in the chat. So Shannon, do you want to go ahead while I'm putting these things in the chat and talk about your program?
Sure. Absolutely.
Just quickly, what is the date? I'm sorry, what is the date for the Day for Housing? Is that May 18th or what?
Yeah, it's May 18th. It is.
Okay, thank you.
There's actually a kind of webinar on May 11th. That's a couple hours in the middle of, and then the down in Dover, it's May 18th. Yeah. And the my church, I put out we're doing a watch party at our church for the webinar on the 11th, and we're trying to do a carpool from First Unitarian to Dover that day. I don't know if the other Unitarian churches in Delaware, we had suggested at our last UUDAN meeting that the rest of them also do that. And so I can find out whether anyone else is doing it, because we have churches across the state that I'm sure they would just love to have more people come and join them. It doesn't have to, you don't have to be a Unitarian to join in a carpool. So.
Thank you, Becky. And I'm curious, and I had sent I don't think I did it right in the chat, but Neil, I'm curious to hear a little bit more about yours, about some of the work that you're doing with the men, but let me tell you about our demonstration project. So we have a property that contains an old historic church, but it's underutilized, and we have there was an interfaith group in Cleveland that was successful in taking a piece of church property and using it and converting the land and building on it, working with some fair housing groups in Cleveland to affordable housing. We have a property like that here in Newcastle County. We are in the process of working to determine if we can get it zoned for affordable housing. And if so, we are excited about the prospect of working with Habitat. That's who we're working with right now, but to actually build affordable housing on church property. This is the exact opposite of a not in my backyard. And there's some cute acronym about it's church, church land being used for housing. Like what better witness than saying, hey, we're taking this real property that we have that's underutilized, right? And building homes and opportunity for people. So that's part of what again, I'm with the Newcastle Presbytery. That's part of what our Montgomery group is working on, and we have a housing group. We are looking to partner with other people. We are interested in anybody and everybody if you think this is interesting. And I am just going to put in a plug for Sonia's webinars. If you haven't seen them, they're just really well done, and there's so much to learn in this space. And as someone who even 2 years ago said housing, really housing, that's just my ignorance. I am deeply convicted that housing is a bedrock. If you can get people housed in safe places, things flow from there. So maybe we can hone in on your watch party, Becky. I'm thinking that I'm going to try to see if we can get some people to.
Yeah, that would be great.
Watch party.
I can definitely send you information.
Yes, please. That would be great. Yeah, so that's what we're doing right now. It's slow going, but just because it's slow, since we've actually seen it happen in Cleveland and know some people in Cleveland, it's doable. it is not some pie in the sky kind of thing. And the goal would be, here's how here's the demonstration project. Let's see if we can get this going. Yes, it's a drop in the bucket, but it also is an important visual drop in the bucket. I think it's an important witness. So.
And
Thanks.
if we could put out a call for volunteers within our Peace and Justice work group who would be interested in working on this housing project with you, what would we be asking those volunteers to commit to, or to do what? Like, how do we differentiate this from other things they volunteer for? What types of things would they be doing if they got involved?
This is one of those, please forgive my ignorance, but what I'd love to say, the most honest answer I can give you right now is, can I get back to you? Because because what I don't know is it fundraising? Is it working with the local zoning ordinance folks and trying to get, this is a historic area, get a zone. There are many things. So it could very well be advocacy. That's the first thing that I thought of, advocacy on a very local level. I don't believe this is going to be a, using hammers and nails kind of work. But I could be wrong on that too. So if you don't mind, and I apologize to everyone we're a work in progress in trying to understand, and the people I'd like to specifically speak with to answer that question would be our Habitat, the folks that are coordinating with Habitat and with us. And I have calls out to the folks in Cleveland since you and I spoke, Lynn, but I have yet to hear back from them. It was right after Easter, so I forgive. I mean, I'm sure they've been taking a breather, but that, because I wanted to be able to answer that question on this call, and unfortunately I don't have the answers.
So I think it sounds super exciting. So I'm looking forward to sharing that as an example with our Peace and Justice work group of where, a single group can, pick a project that's in the space of advocacy and something that's important to them and really make a difference and make things happen.
Right.
I think
Not
that's
just education. Right.
Right. I think that sounds really, really exciting.
Thank you. Not that education isn't worth it. Don't get me wrong. It's very important. So
Donna.
I have another question that maybe Shannon can't answer. Sorry. Shannon, do you know, are they using the existing historic church building and renovating it for housing, or are they just using land around?
In this instance, and in the instance in Cleveland's great question, because you could do either. But in this instance and in the instance in Cleveland, it's creating something new. It's retrofitting the historic building. Is sort of a whole different thing. So no, this would be just taking the land, and of course the land is very expensive. It's always difficult to buy land on which to build. So that's the plan at this point, is new building, new construction.
Becky?
Shannon, I know this was years and years ago, probably upwards of 10, maybe more. The Wilmington Senior Center did a similar thing and made bought land right next to them, or owned land right next to them, and turned it into apartments for senior housing. But they might be a resource for you in some ways if you can find someone who was there back then, because they did have a lot of hurdles to jump. They did have, because of the historic nature of the property, of the things that were going on. So there was the zoning issues, they definitely went through it. But as I said, this was probably more like 15 years ago, to be honest. It was a long time ago. I knew the director then, who was Sue Getman, who I think is not the director there anymore, but I think she still lives in Wilmington. She actually used to live in New Jersey, but I think then she moved to
I
Wilmington.
know Sue. Yep, I know
Sue?
her.
If you
I
know
didn't
Sue
realize she
Button,
had done that. I will definitely, I think she's a member of Lynn's church. She used to, so I absolutely know her. I'll check with
yes,
Sue.
so she was heavily involved. So if you know her, she'll be able to talk to you about this.
Oh,
and
wonderful.
give
That
you
is
some idea
fabulous.
and
I did not
resources.
realize that, Becky. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you, thank you, thank you. Great, great, great.
Cecily?
Yeah, yes. I just remembered that the Cathedral Church of St. John, where I was a member for many, many years, right on the corner of Market and 202, is now a wonderful, wonderful housing for low-income people and people with disabilities. I would think that you would call the diocesan office and follow up, and that's been less than 10 years.
Mhm.
And it's really a wonderful place. So that's somewhere else we can look.
Fantastic. See, this is exactly what, fantastic. Both of these are super, super, super. I'm grateful for them. Thank you.
Mhm.
I feel like there were a couple of others who mentioned housing as a priority for them in introductions. Does anyone else have a specific program in housing going on?
Well,
No,
we're
but
just,
I think that what Cecily was referring to was with the Ministry of Caring. They're running that.
Right. Yes, thank you. Mhm.
so Methodist Action Program has just been supporting the right to representation bill. So that's kind of what we're looking at now. But we also work closely with Habitat for Humanity because the CEO is United Methodist, actually United Methodist pastor. So and a personal friend of mine. So we work closely with them as well.
Yeah, legislatively, I think there's both the right to representation. There is this new, I put a link up above, a new piece of legislation for funding production of affordable housing. That's going to be another big one this legislative session. So a number of things to work on, but it still feels like it's nibbling around the edges. You know, when you look at the amount of affordable housing that Delaware needs, there is nothing even on the horizon that would address that. So I don't know if this is the appropriate forum or not, but one of the things that bothers me is that so many of these things that we work so hard on still seem to be just nibbling at the edges, you know, having incremental impact. And I don't know how many of you have had a chance to read the book Poverty by America by Robert Putnam. It just came out recently. Actually, got the name wrong. Hold on. Okay. Poverty by America. He's the same one who wrote Evicted. And this is his newer book. It's by Matthew Desmond. Sorry, I had the wrong author. And it really puts things in perspective in terms of needing to just rethink our very basic assumptions that go into the systems that we put in place. And, you know, just trying to tweak our existing systems isn't going to get us to where we want. That it's going to take some really structural changes to address, you know, poverty and affordable housing and stuff in the way that we all want it to be addressed. So I can't more highly recommend Poverty by America to get us having some bigger conversations. Not that the stuff we're talking about isn't good and important, because it's the only thing that looks achievable right now. But I would love us at some point to have some of those larger conversations as well.
So yes, Lynn,
so-
it's about
ahead.
who's making the decisions on use of utilizable land, whether it's public land, whether it's private land, and what are we building? I mean, we can't keep building $500,000 home communities, which is what we seem to be doing everywhere. And I don't know. I see that everywhere. I don't know where poor people are going for affordable housing. So I agree with you.
So I need to tell everyone, because we met with Senator Huxtable yesterday. He is one of our key on this topic. He is one of our key advocates. Okay, so watch the bills that he puts out, and because he's got a long-term vision of providing funds, more funds on a consistent basis for affordable housing. You know, I encourage you to be in touch with him, and also, you know, and to encourage him to keep this momentum going, and just watch the bills he's putting out.
Thank you for that.
Cindy?
I don't think it was mentioned. I'm sure some of you are aware. I believe I just read that it's like a good step in the right direction. There's $1 million, not a grant necessarily, but maybe some federal funding that's getting directed towards some affordable housing and getting directed towards builders. I mean, I think it's Matt Meyer and our Newcastle County Council that's working on this and taking that money and trying to use it in conjunction with some builders, either for rehabbing or whatever, to, you know, it doesn't really put a dent in the problem, but it's something. And it was just in the news last week.
Thank you. Becky?
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. So one of the things that's come to my attention about affordable housing, which is just issue-based information, and I don't know what to do about it, is that one of the things that has really gutted the affordable housing market is the Airbnb market, which is a really interesting tangent to the situation, but it's because what people are doing is, instead of having those starter homes that are low cost, they can get so much more money by keeping them, and when they move to other places, by keeping them and using them as Airbnbs or renovating them. People go in and just renovate and keep them as Airbnbs because they can make so much more money than even just selling them. And so it's a really interesting dynamic, and it makes me wonder about regulation and just, that's a whole different issue. And I don't even know where to tell you to go look other than Google it to get information about that. But it's another avenue of possible advocacy that I mean, again, our country is so enamored with the private market, but like, that's a private market that maybe needs to be curtailed some, or something done, because it's literally gutting the affordable market housing for first-time home buyers, for renters. Like it's just for long-term renters, because they can just jack the rent for a 1-week thing rather than renting for a year. Anyway, it's just an
Really interesting. I had not heard that before. So that's a really interesting perspective on how that's impacting the market. Well, one of the things that I'll say is sort of the priority project for Westminster's Peace and Justice Work Group is our Thursday classes. And, you know, Catherine's already publishing those in her weekly newsletter. So those of you who are signing on to that will know what topics we cover. But almost all of those are recorded and posted on our YouTube channel. So we tend to get a lot of viewing after the fact as well. We may only get 10, 20 folks showing up on any given Thursday night, but then, you know, depending on the topic, can get hundreds of views after the fact. And we spread, you know, the types of things just so you all know what to look for, and you're welcome to spread the word about them, either obviously before the event, so we get more people there, the better. But even after the fact, if there's a topic and you don't want to share the recording, feel free. But we often invite advocates from the community to come in on specific pieces of legislation that are we're trying to get constituents to, reach out to their legislators on. So we'll invite speakers in from, again, Delaware Center for Justice, ACLU, various organizations to come in and update us on what's happening and how we can help advocate for things. But oftentimes they're just great discussion topics as well. It really is an educational series about deep topics. So sometimes they're very action oriented. Other times they're just growth and education oriented. And we always leave plenty of time for Q&A. So the speaker will cover a topic, but then a discussion for us all to participate with it. So hopefully that's something that, it's something that we already are doing. We've been doing it for since the summer of 2020. So we've gotten pretty good at it, and it's something that we're happy to share with others so that others don't have to reinvent that wheel. And we're hoping to then, lean on others like the housing project that Shannon just described, so that we can find other ways of getting our advocates or members of our Peace and Justice Work Group involved in other types of projects. Norm.
Let's see.
It's your.
Okay, in Eastern Sussex, we have a different issue regarding affordable housing. And that is, you ride around here and there are help wanted signs all over the place. And at $15 or $17 an hour, people can't afford to work there because they live such a long distance from where they work. I tend to ask people, I go into places, I say, how long does it take you to get to work? I don't ask where they live. And the average is about 45 minutes each way for a low-paying job and high gas prices. That's why you have these signs up, help wanted.
If you're in a resort area, that really makes it hard. Yeah.
And I doubt if you can find a building lot or a house in the city of Rehoboth under $1 million. And Lewis is about the same. So there used to be a large population, Black population in Lewis, but they're not there anymore. And I asked a friend of mine, I said, where are they going? They said, I don't know. It's a real big issue.
It's huge.
And I don't know if I want to read this to you or not. I want to, but I don't know if you want to hear it. But a man who was the William B. Chandler gave a speech, a keynote speech at the U of Delaware campus about 13 years ago. He was Chancellor of the Court of Chancery of the state of Delaware. And he was recognized, I imagine, all over the United States because so many corporations or businesses are incorporated in Delaware, and if they have issues, they end up with the Court of Chancery. He's very well known. And he made a statement. He said, perhaps the most startling effect is the bifurcation of our demographics. As demand for property increases, so does the price. And Sussex and Kent County are fast becoming two class worlds with a vast chasm between the classes. The wealthy who retire here or vacation here, or who profit from the development here, and the rest who serve them. The result is communities increasingly divided by economic status. The rapid growth of Sussex County has not been kind to the tradition of the integration of economic classes. Though the population influx has created jobs, most are low paying and low skilled with little room for advancement. Increasingly, locals cannot afford to live in the towns where they grew up, while the county struggles to provide low and moderate income housing amidst a building boom. And I thought this is very interesting, this last sentence. This financial stratification is reminiscent of the segregated society of the past, an unwelcome, unwholesome situation to which we do not wish to return. So that's what's going on down here.
Thank you for that.
There is affordable housing, but it's a long way from where your low-paying job would be located.
Mhm.
And then
I'm
when you,
not these aren't
Intro-
even Delawareans either. They're coming from all other states.
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
I don't hear a Sussex County accent anymore.
I know that Ocean City, Maryland's actually trying to build like housing for the summer workers. I mean, you've got that issue too. There's the year-round, the residents, but then they have trouble employing people for the summer and just need more like dorm-like structures for young people who work there in the summer, because otherwise it's just not rentable. I lived and worked and rented at the beach when I was in college, and it was the best time of my life, but I don't think I'd be able to afford it. In retrospect now, you know, the way the numbers have gone. And that
Yes.
affects teachers and firefighters and such too, right, Norm? I mean,
Oh,
it's,
yeah,
it's really,
absolutely, yeah. There was a time where teachers were living all over Rehoboth, own their own homes in the city of Rehoboth.
Yeah.
St. Louis. They aren't there anymore. And I don't know where they live.
But again, I have to look at the structures that make those decisions and allow those builders and us who, without knowing, have remained silent, and the local communities that have literally been pushed out of this market. And you can't work, you can't live there, so you have to leave. So who does that leave behind? It leaves everybody behind, really. And the people that live there, I'm not sure that they're vested in the community. Not truly.
An example of what we're talking about, Westminster Presbyterian Church in Rehoboth sold their manse. It's in the second block on Norfolk Street. They sold it for 1.4 million, I believe. And the first thing.
What did you say? What did they sell?
Their manse.
Their-
The house for the minister.
oh,
And they, the buyer tore down the house and put up a bigger one. That's what's going on.
The people that are coming in have a lot of money and they have a lot of power.
A lot of money, yeah.
And I suspect it's county government has an incentive to do this because of the transfer tax and the rest of it, and the tax they can get from the properties. And I'm just waiting to see what's going to happen with the reassessment, to see how much it's going to cost to live down here in terms of tax on your real estate.
Both Cecily and Zita had their hands up.
Yeah.
Zita, you want to go first?
The problem is that the county council members are all developers.
Yes,
Yeah.
That's the case.
and I think
They have been for at least, I've been here 15 years, and it's been the case since I've been here.
if I'm right, county council, there's only one county council person lives east of Route 113. And you don't see that development where they live.
You know, I wanted to speak a little bit to what Norm was saying, and I'm not sure if this is so today. But one of the things I noticed when I was visiting Rehoboth is that the property taxes in Sussex was so much lower on those big, gigantic houses than they were for Kent and Newcastle. And I thought that was really crazy.
Yeah.
That the $1 million house or the $2 million house, the taxes were much, much lower, very low.
Yes,
And
Sussex is 50% of assessed valuation, Kent is 60%, and Newcastle is 70%.
Yeah, so they need to do some changing there. The other thing I wanted to just share a bit was just to share a little bit, to go back around education. And St. Barnabas had a wonderful program, and they invited Elle Dow to come in. And she wrote a book called Baptized in Tear Gas. And she wrote that after the George Floyd murder. And I went to that, and many other individuals from different denominations came. One of the things, we've spoken about is that we're always speaking to the choir. And how do we get more denominations involved and more people involved in this? So what happened is before COVID, I had gone to Temple Bethel when the new rabbi was being initiated. He was a good friend of my son's and daughter-in-law's rabbi in Colorado. Anyway, we hadn't seen each other in several years because of the COVID. And right when the bishop asked me if I would consider being the missioner for RCJRC, I was not sure if I wanted to do this. This is what God was calling me to do at this time since I was retired. So, of course, what happened, the Holy Spirit, when we're open, sent the answer. So Rabbi Jacob called me and said that he had a group of people who were interested in racial justice. And so I invited them to St. Barnabas on the day that Reverend L was speaking, and about 20 people from Temple Bethel came to St. Barnabas on that Sunday and heard her. And Rabbi Lieberman invited me to speak at Temple Bethel, which I did. And I had the honor, he pulled back, I actually saw the scrolls, he pulled back the screen so that I could see the 5 scrolls. And I was really very touched by that. But anyway, 20 people came from St. Barnabas to the temple. And that was wonderful because again, when I just contacted him to see if he wanted to co-sponsor something that we're having, something that Cindy and Maria and their committee, which is wonderful, is working on to see about a film that they're doing, if he wanted to co-sponsor. Immediately he said, I'll talk to my racial justice committee. So before there was none. And now, because they came to us at St. Barnabas, and I went and gave a sermon at their temple, they now have a racial justice community. Mm-hmm. So how do we get out and keep spreading the word to different groups of people? And what's wonderful, when they don't look like you. So that was a wonderful, wonderful experience for both groups. And again, remembering that, they couldn't come on Saturday because that's their Sabbath. I preached on Friday night, and it was a wonderful reception after, and we took pictures of them at our parish. So we all need to continue to spread the word because, a small group can't take on this big mountain. So you're like the first disciples going out and spreading the word. We have to keep spreading the word because you see the amount of work. There's a lot of work in the fields to do, and we certainly need more workers. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thanks, Cecily. I put my hand up this time actually just to do a time check. 3 hours on a Saturday morning is a long time to be together. Do we need to take a little break? People use the restrooms, get more coffee, that kind of thing. Would that be helpful? Okay, and before we do that, Neil, you have your hand up as well. Do you want to speak before we go on break so you remember your thought, or do you want to open us back up when we return?
Yeah, I better say it now before I forget. But comment on Cecily's comment about how do we get people involved. One of the questions I ask in my when I'm discussing, having a discussion with men, and the question is like this phrase is this: everybody has a cause in life they would like to advocate and change. What is your cause? And the answers are varied. And so somebody who is passionate for education really doesn't have as much passion for housing. And so, but what that does for me is capture their interest. And now I know how to market to them to get more engaged. And so I think that's what has to occur. I think we often think, well, yes, this is a significant cause. Why isn't everybody involved with this advocacy? It's not theirs. They don't have the heart for it. And so we have to identify people some way, in some form of fashion, who has the heart to do advocacy work for housing and what other projects we're working on. So I just want to share that comment.
I think that's a very good point. I think all the more reason for us to partner, because if, one organization is doing something on housing, we can all find people within our groups and say, your passion's for housing, here, go work with them. And other folks have a passion for education. Well, here's a faith group working on that, go work with them. So again, real good reasons for us to leverage the work that each other are doing. All right, with that being said, let's go ahead and take a break. It's 10:41. If we reconvene is at 10:45 or a minute after, does that sound good? All
Yeah.
right, see y'all back here shortly.
Okay.
Lynn, is there a way to see get a copy of the chat after the meeting?
Yes, I have saved it, but I can also tell you how to save it yourself if you would
Okay, good.
like.
I would love
So
that.
if you have the chat open, at the very bottom, there are some little icons.
Uh-huh.
You probably have to go under the three dots where it gives you some more options. And under that, save chat is one of the options.
Okay, and how does it, does it end up on my desktop or where
I
does it
think-
save to?
Yeah, I think when the Zoom ends, the file will be right there, so you can save it where you want. I think it probably goes to the desktop. I'm not sure.
Okay. All
But
right.
I can also, send that out to everyone afterwards, as well as a link to the recording.
Okay, good. Also, you mentioned that your, the weekly Westminster group does have access after the fact, and I don't think I definitely don't supply it, and I would love to because I have choir on Thursday night, so I always miss the thing. And I did that I could access those meetings after. I would love to. So if there, maybe Sue, if you happen to be listening, if that could be included when you send out that info, that would be a big help.
Okay. And a link to our YouTube
Hi,
channel
how are
in
you?
the chat.
Good, how are you?
Hold on for a minute.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. I do see that up there, yeah.
Okay. So hopefully folks are dribbling back in. Certainly folks don't have their cameras back on, so hard to tell. But I just going back, checking in on the agenda, I want to make sure that everyone has had a chance to feel like they have shared sort of any projects that they have going on that would be of potential interest for collaboration that they would like to invite others into, or share any learnings they have that they think would be relevant to the group. Just wanted to make sure everyone has had a chance to share that before we move on and start talking about other ways to collaborate. And Neil, I see your hand up. I don't know if that is still up from before or if you have something else you would like to add now. Neil may not be back with us yet. Maybe we need to give another minute or two for folks to rejoin us. Right, looks like we have most everyone back. Not sure about Levada and Becky, but hopefully they are back or will be coming back shortly.
I'm back, I'm just chewing.
Very good.
Me too, me too. I'm
Super.
doing also.
All right, well, let's go ahead. Neil, your hand is still up. Is that up from before? Do you have something else you would like to add? Oh, okay. So Maria.
I just wanted to say thank you for sharing your Presbyterian site so that we can go on there and look at some of your programs. And I'd like to say that our Ellie Dowd program, some of that, if you go onto the St. Barnabas site, you may be able to view that, and you may be able to, if you go on our Sunday worship, you may also be able to view her sermon, which was also quite interesting. So I think those are easy things that we can share and that we can see on our own time. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and I think in a little while, maybe we'll get into a discussion about how to consolidate links and stuff so that we can regularly look things up in addition to, the weekly stuff that Catherine puts out, a site that we can go to look specific things up when we want.
And if you could send those chats, I was just trying to look how I could send the chat to myself, but I didn't seem to find it. So if you could email some of those sites that everybody put up, that would be wonderful and helpful, Lynn. Thank you.
Yep. Well, if everyone is, oops, Norm and Judy?
I would just like to share, was thinking about something Cicely said about the interfaith gathering. We just a couple weeks ago we were invited to the iftar at the mosque in Dover, and talk about a redefinition of hospitality. It was an absolutely amazing event. It was the breaking of the fast on a Saturday night, and they invited the Jewish people from Sussex County at the seaside, the Unitarians, the Methodists, the Presbyterians, the Episcopalians, and it was just a wonderful gathering. I'm a member of a sisters group, which we started about 5 years ago with 2 Christians, 2 Jews, and 2 Muslims. We get together to just talk. And these kinds of sessions are such an important thing. We gave us a summary of like what we had gone through at the Peace Rally, at the Peace Week several years ago, and now 5 sisters groups have formed from it. And we even have a brothers group. And then when we added the Unitarians, we're forming a siblings group now too. So it's just a wonderful thing about sharing your faith and your faith experiences and learning about the other faiths. That I just wanted to bring that up. And I think of the last time we were talking about the 9th Street Board Interfaith Clergy Coalition and Wilmington Interfaith Leadership. I just wanted to get some information about sharing events and things with them.
Glad to help with that.
Yes.
Did Laveda say she could help with that? I didn't quite catch that.
Yes,
Cicely?
yes, I belong to those groups,
Yes.
so I can definitely give you some more information.
Thanks. I have your email now.
Great.
And maybe now would be a good time, skipping ahead a little in the agenda, but talk about how we can bring some more folks to the table in our next discussion. I know I had made an attempt to reach out to, up here to the Muslim Center of Wilmington, where I had a contact from previous conversations after we had Father Boyle come to speak at our church a few years ago. The imam had come to that event, and then I went and met with him for actually a couple hours following that. But I never heard back from them after the invitation. And I don't know, my contact may be old at this point. Maybe that person has moved on. There's also the Islamic Society of Delaware, reached out to our church's contacts there. But again, they were not necessarily people in a social justice movement, just people within the Islamic Society. And again, didn't hear back either. I don't want to just give up on those. So I'm hoping folks here today may have other contacts where they might be able to reach out and try to find a good connection to bring additional participation in. Several of you have mentioned a mosque in Dover. So if there's someone there, that would be great if there's an interest from someone there joining. I think it would be great if we could get more of the temples participating, if folks have connections there. There are a couple others on our invitation list who have asked to stay on our distribution list, so they're interested, just have, we're not able to make it today or the previous meeting. I also feel like there's an opportunity to get more Black churches, particularly from Wilmington, involved. I know IMAC, I believe, is active again. I don't have any connections there right now. Hopefully someone does and might be able to,
I do, Lynn. I chair the health committee, and IMAC has been active all along. And as you were speaking, I would suggest that we contact Rabbi Michael Bills, who is president of the Delaware, the governor's faith-based partnership, and they have representation from the different organizations. The Interfaith Power and Light, we are involved with different faith communities. Faith Forward Collaborative. I mean, that's why I said early on that I do have quite a few number of community organizations related to interfaith activities.
I would love to see, Levada, if you and others can possibly follow up with invitations. Rabbi Beals was on the original invitation for the February meeting, and he never responded. So I took him off the list. I don't want to keep bothering people if they never responded. Rabbi Robinson, although he hasn't been able to join us, responded and said, please keep me on the list. So I've left him on. I took Rabbi Beals off. Also, Interfaith Power and Light, same thing, was on the initial invitation, but never responded. So I also removed.
It may be that I need to be the intermediary for all of those groups, because Rabbi Bills and Rabbi Robinson are part of the Ninth Ward Interfaith Clergy Coalition.
And Lynn, I have to tell you that IPL is going through a leadership change in Newcastle County, so that might be why you didn't get a response.
Okay. But yeah, there's nothing, we're not trying to be exclusive at all with this group. I just didn't want to keep people on a distribution list that they didn't necessarily want to be on. So if I never heard back, I dropped them. But please feel free to cascade this to whoever you think would be interested. And we can add anyone else to the distribution list.
Like I said, I'm the town crier.
That's awesome.
I like Neil's suggestion that perhaps we can ask the groups as we reach out and communicate with them to ask them, what is your cause? What is your particular passion? And this way you could target things to them, Lynn, as to we're having these discussions, or this group is spearheading that, and that might be one way of getting them active in what they firmly believe and support in.
I like that idea.
And so my question would be, so I'm here representing First U, but also then 5 UU churches, but I could open it up to see if any other of the Unitarian churches across the state want to join on their own, like to come and hear and be a resource as well and a participant, if you're interested in that, if you want me to do that.
Sure. Anyone who would like to join the conversation is welcome. Would it be helpful or make things easier if there was a name or a way which we refer to this group. I know when I go looking for information in my inbox, I just keep copying and pasting faith-based initiatives and social justice, because that has been part of the title in every email that I've sent out. But it's a mouthful. And I, if that works for everyone, I will just keep using that phrase. But I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on how we should refer to these conversations.
I wonder if some communities, my community in particular, might have some level of discomfort. I think sometimes we think of social justice as racial justice, which is included, because we're looking at a broad picture. But I think sometimes people are only looking at this on a racial issue, and some of them are really challenged by that. And maybe, I don't know, I don't know what the issues might be, but I wonder if that's part of it. I don't know. So I'm just throwing that out there.
I mean, that may speak to the level of education that's required if, even the term social justice is scaring people away. That's pretty sad.
Yeah, I have to tell you, in the United Methodist tradition, those are scary words, and that's why it's so important for us to educate about the social principles, because people kind of shy away from that. I don't know why.
It's very true. I mean, even at the leadership level, in the statewide or diocesan or national Episcopal Church, that discussion occurs, and which priests are willing to speak out on social justice and concerns about those in the church that, sadly don't want to hear about that, right, Marie? so
Yes,
it's.
I agree that it's really important that we keep the issues before the public eye. My grandson, I'm proud to say, just won an Emmy as one of the Emmy Award winners from the historically Black colleges and university. And he's in communications, and they did a documentary on America's sin. Racial injustice is America's sin. And if we are, as a faith group, want to be effective, we've got to keep that issue so that we can have some reconciliation.
That's why I do like Reverend Barber's movement into saying it's about justice, but it's about poor people justice, because we keep thinking that it's just that yes, there has been a lot of Black injustice, but there've been plenty of white people that have been hoodwinked into supporting things that are certainly not in their best interest, which has hurt everybody. So that when he looks at his poverty campaign and tries to include other people that are certainly affected by all of the systemic injustice, and they don't even see it. So I agree. That's where the educational piece becomes so important, so that when we look at justice, it really is justice for all. And what's wrong with that?
Well, and as Reverend Barber points out, or the Poor People's Campaign, it's the interlocking injustices where racism is one of the primary interlocking injustices, because these injustices all overlap in significant ways. But Cindy, your hand was up.
It just occurred to me, in particular, Norman, Judy, I don't know if anyone else is from Sussex County, but I participated in a racial healing retreat held at Camp Arrowhead down in Sussex County. And I had the privilege of meeting a woman who leads the Southern Delaware Alliance for Racial Justice. So you're probably familiar with that group, but She kind of grassroots started that group and is they do a lot of good stuff.
Charlotte King.
Yes, Charlotte.
So for those who didn't recognize in the introduction, when I guess Zita was referring to SDARC, that is the Southern Delaware Alliance for Racial Justice.
And and I wasn't on at the beginning, so okay.
Zita? Oh, you muted, Zita.
One of the topics that I think is very important that I haven't heard any groups bringing up is reparations. And that would be something that a group like this could really spearhead.
Absolutely. One of the folks who hasn't been able to join us in this meeting yet, but is someone who I met as we started sending out the invitations, is in that Google sheet, is Corey Fields, who's the senior pastor at Calvary Baptist Church in Newark and heads up a new group, that the Newark Interfaith Leaders. And our Peace and Justice Work Group invited him in to do one of our Thursday classes. He has a great presentation on what are sort of the biblical or faith text underpinnings of social justice work. And it's a really great presentation that is well worth looking at in terms of helping folks understand the links between faith and the need to act for social justice. It's really a great presentation. I wish he was here today to share some of his thoughts on that. But again, it's one of the recordings. So if you go to our YouTube channel, I'm sure it's within the last few months, so you'd be able to find his presentation on that.
So it's on your YouTube channel, Lynn?
Yes.
Yes, that would be great. That's part of the sharing. And I keep going back to our baptismal covenant, that how is it that we as Christians, we say we believe these things, can we now act on them? Because this is Christian. And when I say Christian, I don't diminish Muslim or Jewish. These are things that all of our faiths hold strongly. And so to help us act on it and to understand that if we're faith-based, we're called to this. And I think that's so critical to stir people's passions up.
Veda?
Yes, one of my Billy Waxes is that I like gathering with people of like minds, but I want to do more than talk. I want to move to some action. And one of the things that we got started on and kind of lost the leadership on was the movement for a culture of peace. We started, there's an international movement of nonviolence cities. One was started in the United States in Carbondale, Illinois. Right now, there are about 49 cities involved in a movement for a culture of peace. We got started here in Wilmington under the leadership of Jeffrey Lott. And I think he got busy with other things, but it was part of Pacham and Terrace. And I think that kind of devolved into Peace Week, and things just got kind of moved along. And so I'd like us to revisit that, because we have to think about what is violence and what is nonviolence, and what is addressing some of the issues of racial injustice. If we are serving a one God, he made us in his image. We are one race. We don't have different races. We're one race. We have to bring that back to people's consciousness and get this movement for a culture of peace is a way of doing it because you have a workbook. You have, it's like a 6-week learning sessions, and it should be a ripple effect that would involve our government, our public and private sectors in the city, so that all of us can come together under one common mission to address the issues of social injustice, racial injustice. So I'd like us to revisit that. The author of that book has passed away, but I believe it's still available through some, and I could find out how to get that. But let's look at, if you go on the website Movement for a Culture of Peace .org, you could see what that movement is all about. But it's modeled after Nonviolent Cities, Carmel, Illinois.
I'll share that link in the follow-up email so that.
Yeah, that would be good if we could all take a look at that and see if that wouldn't be a potential for us to bring other peoples in. We get started as this the base group and have it be a ripple effect throughout the state. That would be wonderful.
Levita, I agree. And I think it would be so powerful, since we are all faith-based, to have something like that we present in all of our congregations, to say, okay, here's our workbook. Now, where do you choose to go in action based on what this basis? But I think we need a basis. We need the definitions. We need to understand, as Reverend Barber said, that, hey, racism is violence. Poverty is violence. Let's get down to that.
Yes.
And then we can go on into our advocacy and destroy some of the systemic violence that we're all living under.
I agree. They offer 4 pillars under which action can be taken. So again, as we were talking about earlier, having the groups who have one specific interest or passion develop something under that pillar, and so forth and so on. And I do think we can make a significant impact.
Thanks. Becky?
I love that idea. I mean, that sounds great. Jeff Lott is from First U, so I know he was really involved in that. But made me wonder about Pochaman Terrace. Do we have anyone from there here at this group?
We do. I guess I didn't realize it was a faith-based group. So
it's international.
It is international. That's a good point. Maybe it's not technically faith-based. It's a good point. Just all the people I know who are involved are people of faith. It's probably just because they gravitate to that.
It's different faiths, but it's an international group.
Anyway, that's it. Yeah, something to think about. But I just wanted to ask if anybody in this group knows about, we saw an announcement about the city of Wilmington doing a truth and reconciliation group. Does anyone know anything about that?
City Council actually has a reparations task force.
Yeah. Is that a group that anybody knows who's a part of that, or how to find out what they're doing? Or
I can find out because I'm part of the health planning committee.
Yeah,
So
because I've just always wondered. I sort of heard that it existed and was like, well, that's really interesting. How can we all like get on board and support whatever? Well, hopefully it would be something we would want to support, and not that they're, burying it or something.
I can make that my task.
What?
I can make that my task.
Yeah.
Well, I know BB Coker is one of the folks on that task force, and
That's good news. That's good.
Yeah,
news.
so that's an example. We plan to have her in as a speaker for our Thursday class series to give us an update on what the task force is doing and how those
great.
conversations are going. So
Great.
that's an example of the kind of speakers that we bring in for those Thursday evenings. So I expect you'll see her coming up in the next month or two.
And
I
then,
think she,
okay, go ahead.
Oh, Sue just put in the chat later in May. That one should occur.
I thought that she was also part of maybe the Episcopal Church reparations. So again, because churches have such a long history of racism, slavery, you know, that I think each church needs to look at its own reparation kinds of issues. Yeah.
And then the other thing I wondered about, did anyone here attend the YWCA had a sort of Saturday session on the flying of the Confederate flag in Sussex County? At that, it's like at a county building, I want to say. Yeah. Go ahead, Sita.
You're muted.
You're muted.
It's not at a county museum building, it's at the museum.
At the museum. So, right. So I attended that and it sounded like that group also really wanted to get into action on many different things. And when I was attending that, I was thinking this needs to be like publicized because they were like, and it's not just a Sussex County issue. There was corruption involved with the county council and how it all went down. And like, it was just such a crazy story. And so I just wondered if anyone else had sort of attended that or been at that, because that sounded like something that the whole state needed to kind of get behind in terms of this needs to change, like how the money occurred, because it wasn't just I'm not quite remembering. It was a couple months ago, and
Yeah, well, it was the whole controversy was started by SDARJ because they wrote a letter to the city council challenging the way it was done, and they got tried to get the AG's office involved, and there were all kinds of letters to the editors about it. It really became quite a big deal. But
and it was a mess because I mean, basically, it sounded like it was voted down, and then the two people who wanted it just paid a lot of money and got it anyway.
No, they didn't. They used the county money.
Yeah, use the county money. That's right. Which is another reason
it was a grant.
The inspector general bill is so huge in this. I feel like having an inspector general to investigate things like that would be such a big positive for Delaware, because there's just too much of that kind of like someone said in the chat here, like, isn't that a conflict of interest that all the local government is builders? Anyway, anyway, I just thought that was another thing to try to figure out what in the end happened to that and how we could all advocate for that and make sure on a racial justice front that we're not flying a Confederate flag in Delaware on public land or museum land.
Yeah, Zita, wasn't it being flown and then they decided that it needed to go into a museum?
No,
No?
that was what was offered by SDARJ. If you want to have it as, put it in a museum and have a context for it and say, something about it. But there's a monument there too. It's a Confederate monument as well as the flag.
Yeah, I thought I think I did listen in on that, and the concern was that it should be addressed by the whole state. And that, yes, that was the big controversy, that it shouldn't be just one item, but the whole state should be looking at that on that particular Saturday.
Exactly.
I wasn't at the Saturday conference. I was just involved in when SVRJ first challenged it
Okay.
and tried to get something going, and
Oh,
but it ended up not going there.
okay. Becky, is that what you remember also? Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
and there was a whole push at the end. They were like, we have to keep this conversation going and do what we can to publicize, but I've heard nothing about it since. So I don't, I just don't know what happened to it. And it's again,
I think BB Coco was there that Saturday. Wasn't she one of the
I
speakers?
think she was one of the speakers.
Yes, yes, it's
she was.
coming back to me.
Yes.
Yes, okay, yeah. BB is not too well right now, so
Oh, no.
yeah. So keep her in your prayers.
Well, thanks for sharing that. In terms of joint initiatives that we might be interested in doing, I had put in there an idea that a couple of us have talked about, which is a group like this working together to sponsor maybe a monthly documentary or movie viewing at a public space, so it would be a faith-sponsored initiative, but getting it outside of the walls or confines of our churches, synagogues, or mosques, and getting people into a public space to focus on some of these social justice issues in a forum that then allows for some discussion afterwards as well. This may be more in the way of educational than action oriented. So I'm not sure if that fits what this group is looking for in terms of wanting to be really action oriented, but I think it does help bring a faith-based discussion into the larger community and pull the community into a discussion driven by folks from the faith community about social justice issues and the need to take action. So I just throw that out there to see, is that something that this group might be interested in sponsoring? I understand that we have people from all over the state. The couple suggestions that I have are Wilmington theaters that we might partner with, which obviously does not address the whole state, but at least a significant part of it. So I'll just throw that out there for comments.
It
I
could be
think
done.
it's a-
I think that's a great idea. Del Tech would have space throughout all three counties to hold something, a venue.
I like that idea, especially at University of Delaware, Delaware State University, because it gets the population opportunity to attend a school of color, and it is in the middle of the state. And I think that it's so important for people to be educated and to start to have an idea of what they are interested in. Going back to Neil's statement of letting people speak about what their interest is. And then if we have key people that can discuss with individuals after the film, different things. And I'd like to say from my diversity hat is that whatever the group is, we should have two people, and those two people should be a different color or male or female. So I think it's an excellent idea, and people do like to have group sessions after so that they can process. And then they can be given also a list that we will have garnered of the various areas that they might like to make contact with. But I think that's a non-threatening way to begin. And definitely it needs to be in the middle of the state because we're talking about equality. And I think Delaware State would be a wonderful place. And Lavita, we know there are many people we can contact there who would really welcome that.
Well, and I guess, is it better to choose a single location and want people to drive from all over to that single location, or pick 3 different locations across the state so that it makes it more easily accessible to folks without having to drive so far?
I think multiple locations would be good,
Multiple
Lynn.
locations.
At the last to have a big summit at one location.
I like the multiple locations also. Now, would we be showing the same film? I think we should show the same film at all 3 locations. And then have people at all 3 locations to speak. So that means we're gonna have to go out and garner folks so we can pair them up and have the same questions. With something to drink after too, you know, we need to have little things for people to nosh on.
And I think the discussion and where the discussions go, and at the end, having areas where someone can sign up for an action, for example.
Right. Yeah.
Like particular to the movie, I think it's, if I get the title right, it's How We Are. And when
The way we were.
the way we are,
The way we are, yeah.
the way we are. So when you look at all the issues that he touches upon, then you could say, well, you know, am I for housing? Am I for legal justice, civil rights? Am I for voting? Am I for this? Am I for that? So I think that that would give individuals, because education can hit that passion and can raise you to a particular cause. And so the choice of the information would be very helpful if it's not just a one focused thing, but maybe touches upon several issues of justice.
Yes. And I believe that is on Netflix because Maria and
Yes.
Cindy, that's what you guys are doing at. So
Yeah,
it might be good for all of us to watch it and then say, yes, this is a film that, you know, we'd like to work from. So that's, you know, just a suggestion. If we want to do that, we all need to look at it and say, yes, this is something we could find people to stick their teeth in, bite on and go with.
Another one on Black maternal health is Aftershock.
Cool.
Is that on Netflix too?
I think right now it's on Hulu.
Okay, thanks.
This is the first thing we're talking about that would actually require us to commit new time to doing something. You know, everything else is sort of leveraging each other's, just kind of communicating with each other and leveraging each other's stuff. This would be something new that if we want to do it, folks are going to have to step up and volunteer to make this happen. So let's do a check. Is that something that folks have the energy for, where we have enough people who want to step up and work on this? Is monthly biting off more than we can chew? Do we want to start off saying maybe we'll commit to a quarterly event and see how that goes? You know, how are folks feeling in terms of the ability to put the time and effort into making this happen? Oh, and I see.
I'm willing, and I think this is a good time because we're going into the longer days. You know, if we can do something by the end of the summer or while it's still light.
Especially planning for fall.
I was going to say it sounded like this was leading up to another committee. That was.
Take the gun away, Lavita. We need you.
I've been trying to back out. I said, my birthday is in November, and I said, I'm backing out on some of these committees that I got to be on. And I said, that sounds like another committee, but I'll volunteer to be on that committee.
And Sue Linderman also put in the chat, even though she can't talk, she volunteers. So.
Yeah, and one thing that we had talked about, I talked about with Lynn before, but remember I said pilgrimage at the beginning of this conversation. There is a documentary called, I have yet to see it, but it's called Get on the Bus, and it's an organization in Chestertown, and Washington University created the documentary. It's a documentary taking people from the site of the last lynching in Chestertown, taking the soil from there and taking it down to the Equal Justice Museum. I always get it wrong. And there are a lot of young people in this group. They're older people, but the whole point was to have intergenerational work. So it's local. I don't want to overstate here, because the way we are is a phenomenal documentary. But this is an opportunity for potentially for a Juneteenth. I know, I believe that we are going to, meaning Newcastle County, there will be a showing at one or more Presbyterian churches on or around Juneteenth of this local documentary, Get on the Bus. And then the idea is to raise awareness of systemic racism, et cetera. So whether it be the way things are, the way we are, it's, as I said, it's phenomenal. It's great. It's great. It's very educational, and it's got lots of jumping off points. I just wanted you all to be aware that that is something that we're trying to make happen for this Juneteenth with this other local documentary.
And you're saying this Juneteenth, you're talking about doing that Get on the Bus.
We would be. Now, let me be clear. If the group were advocating something else, I'm always willing to, listen, plan, try. I'm just telling you that we have something, a product, a local product that we could use for this or any other time. We had thought we would use it for Juneteenth. That made sense to us, but it need not be. It was just what we were planning on doing.
And that's in a few months, not too long.
Yes, the idea there is we have it, we publicize it, we have a place we can show it in one or more, in more than one county. And it's a possible discussion point. Doesn't have to be used in June. It doesn't have to be used then. It's just going to be available then. And we could use the way we are, which is equally, I don't want to say equally powerful. It's powerful on a national level.
Right.
So just throwing it out.
Okay.
And Cecily and Neil and now Becky all have your hands up. So
My hand was up from before, but I do have something to say quickly. I know that the Racial Justice and Reconciliation, as the missioner, we would be interested in joining with you with Juneteenth, Shannon. If that's going to be definitely, we could give you some funds for that. The other important piece is the film is who we are. And the other thing that I want to say is it's so important. We have not talked about young people, but I believe it's so incumbent upon us to have young people involved. So right now, my commission, we're going to St. Andrews. We're going to get 2 students, either sophomores or juniors. So when we do these films, young people they're interested in coming out for films. So I think it's really incumbent upon us to touch the young people, because they're our future and they're here, and we're all getting a little more mature. I never say, oh, more mature. That sounds nicer.
It's also a way for young people to see religious faith in action, because there is, we had some feedback from a scout troop leader. It was very interesting. And she was talking about the youth in her scouting groups, and some are very disillusioned because they see things on, there are elements of fundamentalist religion that align with white supremacy, etc. And so then what if they then view all religion that way and decide that is it's hypocrisy? And so I think it is important that for youth to see that, look at all these different faith communities just on our call that are interested in these things, because they are and they care. And
the other thing, young people need something to stick their teeth in. We all had you had the Vietnam War, there was World War II, we had the women's movement. We had many things that we were very passionate about. And young people are passionate, and they need to have something to work towards, something that they can feel good about. And also see more mature people being leaders and showing them the way and being involved, working with them. So I think that, again, we need our youth.
Neil?
Yeah, going back to Maria's question about social justice it encompasses a lot. And I do agree, but I think we all come to the table with different issues, which is fine. But I think we'll never discuss those issues until we began to form relationships. And I think the key to this is number one, forming relationships. And Interfaith Philadelphia, that's an organization that I intern with. And even though I said my work is African-American men, I'm still equally committed to interfaith engagement and interfaith discussions. They have done a lot of work on getting people of different faiths to just come and learn about each other's faith. And you may want to take a look at their website, interfaith.org. And in their discussions, some of their programs are on Zoom where they have a worship, and whoever is interested in that faith tradition can go to that program, and the leader talks about what goes on in the worship experience, and then the worship occurs and the leader comes back and answers any questions. Relationships like that, events like that help to establish relationships, because it causes us to shift from our social location to another social location. And it causes us to really put us in a reflective mode on our own faith tradition. What's right and what's wrong, what could be improved. But what it essentially does too is gets to the heart issue. In order to change some of these issues or the ills of society, to me, ultimately, there has to be a change of heart in a lot of people. And that's what should be always on our mind. How can we change the hearts of people? Really, we can't. We only, our supreme being can do that for the most part. But what can we do to impact that? And I think those are the types of, in the background, even though we have all these events, but those are the key questions I think we need to always have in our minds in the background as we plan these events. How can we change the heart of people? And how can I shift my social location to another person's social location so I may have empathy for that social location, explore what's wrong with my social location?
Thanks, Neil. I agree. When it comes to, relationships being the central part of, essentially everything and all the change we want to make, we do need to get back to a discussion about eventually before noon about next meetings and whether we want to try to do that in person instead of Zoom again, and building relationships. I feel like actually being able to be in the same room has a lot of benefits to doing that, but it also, when we're statewide, makes things difficult. So we need to have that discussion. But Becky, your hand has been up.
Yeah, sorry. Another event that we're having, you reminded me because of the movie thing. We're partnering with the ACLU on movies, the movie From Selma to Stonewall, which is a documentary about how the civil rights movement and the LGBTQ equity movements intersect, and how the two movements, their similarities, their differences, and how they find themselves sort of amid the struggles of hate crime and anti-Blackness and police brutality and all that. So if anyone's interested, we have a showing at the UU Church in Lewis, and a showing at First U up here in June, the June Sundays, the 1st and 2nd, I think. So if you're interested in that, let me know and I'll send you that information as well. But I think movies, I mean, to Neil's point, I think movies and discussions are a way to work on that changing of the heart thing, and and creating people, finding more people who are interested in the work. And so an education, I think it's a good place to start in some ways in terms of building coalitions.
Storytelling is such an important part of the work, both, through prepared materials like the films we're talking about, but also having just local people sharing stories. The storytelling is such.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because the Friends Committee on National Legislation, that's a big part of their pitch, is to learn how to storytell to your representatives.
Right.
Part of their peace advocacy pitch is about storytelling.
Maria?
Yeah, agree with everything. And that's exactly it with Neil's building of relationship and changing of heart. We hope that through storytelling, someone can at least start to do some soul searching and questioning of themselves and our own biases, because we all have them. And how do we recognize them? How are we honest? But again, I find even building relationships within my own church and storytelling within my own church becomes a necessary piece. And so how do we reach out when we're having trouble reaching in? So depending upon where each of our congregations are, more work may have to be done within as we try to go without. But we can use the larger format to say, hey, this is also available as we expose each other to our own stories. Sometimes we don't even recognize our own stories. And in listening to so much of the racial stuff, I was able to touch base with some of my own childhood experiences that I just chalked up to experiences. We didn't think of these issues as racial. We just thought about that's the way it was. And so a lot of us have been exposed in one way or the other, and sharing those stories, I think, does help within the smaller framework. And yes, that's where maybe some Zoom and some meeting locally, like say at your Presbyterian church, Lynn, for those of us that can make it, that some of us can meet as a group, and those that cannot because they're distant still participate in Zoom. That will help in somewhat of a building up of our local community. And each one of us, for example, if those in Rehoboth can get a few of their people in one location, one home, and they're all doing Zoom with us together, and some of us are meeting as Presbyterian, because we do want to build those relationships that Neil is talking about. That is important.
So we have 15 minutes left this morning. So I want us to turn to focusing on wrapping up next steps, make sure we have a clear path forward. There seems to be we've talked about wanting to do some things together. We've talked about Peace Week, Juneteenth, and these sponsoring film watching with discussions. The question, in a way to simplify our path forward, would we want to say that we focus on doing these films with discussions for both a Juneteenth event and a Peace Week event? And that may be the way we kind of dip our toe into co-sponsoring something from our various faith groups in moving forward, that allows us to kind of hit a number of things we said we wanted to try to do. In which case, I know I wrote down that I think Cecily and Sue, who both had to jump off already, but also Leveda, were interested in helping to do that. Okay, great. This is a call for volunteers. I see Shannon putting up her hand. Maria, great. Catherine, nice. Anyone else like to volunteer that I missed? All right, well, we'll facilitate getting that group together to specifically focus on these film discussion projects to move that forward. What about for the next convening of this group, hopefully with the addition of some other players? I know Leveda, as you said, you could help reach out to some others to bring into the conversation. When would you like to do that? You know, how soon should we get this broader group back together again? You know, in person versus Zoom, weekend versus evening, what, you know, thoughts on when and how we should meet again?
I like daytime meetings, not too late so that it's not too dark. So this is a good season and time to do some meetings, and I have some flexibility, but I don't know about others. But would love to meet with you at your church, for example, or, you know, wherever, at St. Barnabas, whatever local community. It could be our Jewish community or whatever denomination. So I'm open.
Sita? Well, you're muted.
Just wanted to say that if you want to include members of, you know, synagogues, for example, Saturday morning is not the time to meet because.
Right.
Right.
Good point, and the point I was going to make.
And if folks prefer weekends, Sunday afternoons may be an alternative.
Yes.
All right, so it sounds like Sunday afternoons might be a good time. How soon would folks want to meet again? Again, I heard a lot of pushback in our initial meeting about not wanting to add this to another list of meetings that
Well,
we're
will
all
the
going to.
Juneteenth group meet separately to organize that?
Yes, that group will meet separate from the whole group.
But I still think we should meet in late summer to plan, say, for Peace Week, October.
Well, Leveda, I know you guys are doing Peace Week. I agree. I don't disagree, Maria, but Leveda, you'd said, like, when would you guys be meeting
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
Peace Week, and how can we?
Right.
Actually, there's gonna be a development workshop. I don't have it at the top of my head, but I could find out and pass it on. It's in my calendars, when the next development meeting will be. Generally that's probably on a Saturday as well. And I was just having a problem with meeting on Sunday, because that's the only day out of the whole week that I get to spend time with family.
Yes.
So, you know, cutting in on that is not really acceptable for me.
Well, if we're not talking about a 3-hour retreat type meeting like this, and we're just doing a 1-hour check-in, introducing new people kind of thing, would an weekday evening work? That's what we did in February. It was a weekday evening.
I'm good with weekday evenings, except Tuesdays.
Yep.
And how soon would you like to meet again? I can send out, well, let me ask you this. Is it better to send out a doodle poll, which makes it a
doodle poll.
multi-step process?
Yes.
Okay.
Doodle
We'll do a
poll.
doodle poll. How soon?
I think that Maria had the right idea that if we're going to put something together for Peace Week, probably August.
I agree.
Although, Leveda, do you know when the
Let me
when the event? Do you know when the events have to be posted to Peace Week? Do you know like the deadline?
We have a steering committee meeting coming up this Monday. And I'm trying to see if that is Monday is the first. It's a collaborative workshop. So if you're from 5, and I don't have the location, but I can find that out. But it's a collaborative workshop on Monday at 5 o'clock. And it's probably will be at St. Stephen's on Broome Street.
Well, in the follow-up communication to this meeting, I will try to get the information about that Peace Week workshop and include that as well, so that any interested folks from this faith-based team can go to that meeting and be up to speed on all that as well.
You know, and there is a website, peaceweekdelaware.org,
right,
where information is posted.
They're having one of those collaborative workshops downstate too, I think, down in, but I don't know where exactly, but I think that's on May 13th also, the same day as the peace advocacy. But theirs is in the morning and the peace advocacy is in the afternoon. So I think yeah.
All right, so I think we have both a list of folks who are going to work on our film project. We'll get those folks convened shortly. We'll do a doodle poll to pick a weekday evening, I guess in early August, for the next larger group meeting. And again, in preparation for that, if folks can reach out to other contacts they have in other parties that we want to bring to the table, please let me know so we can include them on the doodle poll as well when that is ready to go out. The other part that I'd like us to spend a couple minutes on is, again, communicating information, between meetings. A lot of us have great stuff to share. Is there anyone here that has particular expertise in using technology for that kind of thing? Wonderful. I don't really have expertise either, but I think I could probably succeed in setting up a shared Google folder for us. And in that shared Google folder, we can keep all kinds of different documents. One would be the document that, for instance, I had already shared in the chat, which is just a list of all the people and their email addresses and stuff and what group they're associated with. But I could also start a document that has links to various websites of interest so that we know where to go for information. It would be a place for folks to, put other information that they have about projects they are working on. You can upload documents into that folder. And I guess we can see how it works out and say, if there's something that you put in there and you want to let people know, hey, there's this timely thing. Our group is working on this new project. I just put information on it in the folder, and just let people know by email. We all have that distribution list. If that starts to feel overwhelming, then we can, find another means of updating each other, or just tell people, look, just check the Google folder, occasionally for updates because we're overwhelming people's inboxes, stop emailing. But I'll say initially, is it okay if we just try, if you have something to share, go ahead and email the group. And if it gets to be too much, we'll change.
I would agree to that, but I have one request. If you put something in the email for general knowledge, the rest of us don't need to say, okay.
Right.
Yeah. It's nice to say thank you, but we don't all need to hear you all saying thank you or whatever for sharing, that kind of stuff. Please don't. Let's minimize use of the email for actual sharing of information, not all the pleasantries.
And no reply all. Just
Yeah. Actually,
That's what I'm talking about.
I'm the person who sent it, if you're interested in more information.
Yes, yeah.
Over
I'll
to Claire.
share.
Very good. And what we should do next time, I should have thought of this at the beginning of this meeting, was I should have asked for a volunteer to take notes. I did not do that. I have been sketching some things myself, and I think for this meeting, I'm committed to doing a follow-up and providing links to the various things that we've talked about and whatnot. I'll also share a link to this recording, as well as a link to the chat. So we'll have all of that stuff I will put in this email, but hopefully we can rotate that responsibility and get others doing that for future meetings. So I don't feel like it's my job. Any other closing thoughts or ideas?
I just want to say thank you to you for coordinating all this and getting us all together. I think that's fantastic. And I think it's really hopeful because churches tend to stay siloed. And I think even though we keep hearing about all these interfaith things that are going on, one that's focused on advocacy is probably pretty unique, actually. So I'm feeling really hopeful about that. And I really like Leveda's idea about nonviolent Wilmington, or nonviolent cities, or nonviolent Delaware. Let's just do the whole state. I mean, so I know she put something in the chat on that, so maybe we can make sure some of our next meeting is talking about that as a possibility of action.
Very good. Well, thank you all for giving up so much of your weekend to do this. I know it was a lot to ask for a 3-hour chunk of time, but I found it very, very useful. So thank you all for dedicating that much time.
Thank you all.
All right. Have a good rest of your weekend, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.